Daf Tzadi Dalet Amud Aleph will begin Daf Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis, the Mishnah at the bottom. Zok the Mishnah, Hamaitzi Oichlin Pachos Mikashir, if a person carries out on Shabbos food which is less than the shear of Haitzah, so it's less than the shear for the Oichlin to be chayiv, he can't be chayiv on the Oichlin. If he took it out, Bikli, even if he took it out in a container, in a vessel, Potter, Afal Kli. He's potter on the oichlin because less than a shear, but he's also potter on the kli. Why? Shakli tfeil away, because the kli is secondary to the oichlin. He doesn't really need the kli per se. It's only to carry it, to facilitate carrying out the oichlin. And since it's only an accessory to the oichlin, he's potter on both of them. As a chai b'mita, in similar case, we have similarly, if a person takes out a chai b'mita, he takes out a living person in a mita. Now, a living person, he's potter because we have a principle of chai noises atzmai. A living person is considered in a certain way carrying himself. And we'll explain this concept in greater detail shortly. So, in any event, though, carrying out the chai, you're potter because of chai noises atzmai. Now, even if he carries him out in the mita, potter afal mita, he's potter on the mita as well. Shamita tfeil. Because, again, the same idea that the bed is considered only an accessory to carrying out the mez, and therefore, the chai rather, and therefore, he is potter, he's not, intent isn't to carry out the mita per se, and therefore he's potter on the chai, because chai noises asma, and he's potter also on the mita. As a mez b'mita, however, we carry out as a mez b'mita, so that's carrying. So he's chai for carrying out the mez. Chai. And similarly, even a kazayis min a mace, a kazayis min a nevela, or kazayis from a nevela, ukedashim min a sheretz, or a lentil size of a sheretz. Now, all of these things are matama. These are the minimum shiurim to be matama by a mace, a nevela, and a sheretz. So, since they have chashivas legabi the din of tuma, they have the chashivas legabi the din of hitzah. So chai, then he's chai. But Rav Shimon, pointer Rav Shimon, pater, he paters it. Why does Rav Shimon pater? He's carrying. So it's Rav Shimon Lishit also that says, that holds that this is a malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, you're pater. As Taisus explains elsewhere, therefore the Tanakama is Rav Yehuda. He holds malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, you're chai. So a maze, if he takes out a maze, then he's chai. Because even though it's a malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, Rabbi Yehuda says you're chai. Rav Shimon says it's potter. What is a malacha sheina tzricha lagufa? We explain this in several places. A malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, according to Rashi holds that the purpose of a malacha in the Mishkan was to do something constructive, to construct the Mishkan. So therefore, the malacha, to be chayiv as a malacha, it has to be an action that's done in order to create something positive, constructive. If a person is only eliminating a negative, he's only removing a negative, then that's not considered a malacha that's similar to what was done in the Mishkan. That's not a malacha shetzricha legufa. It's not needed for its own purpose. A person would rather not have to do it at all. So in the case of the mace, if his purpose for removing the mace, or in the case of the tumah, if his purpose for removing the tumah is simply to remove the source of tumah from the house, he really has no positive purpose in bringing it to this other place. There's no constructive purpose over there. It's simply to remove the tumah, to remove the negative from the house. That's malacha sheina tzricha lagufa, which Rav Shimon says is potter. Rav Yehuda says you're chayiv. Taisus has a different explanation of malacha sheina tzricha lagufa. He says it has to be doima to what was done in the Mishkan. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a constructive, positive purpose. And even if removing a negative theoretically could be malacha, but every malacha has to be similar to the way it was done in the Mishkan. And in the case of haitzah, in the case of carrying, so in the Mishkan, the way it was done was to bring the items to the Mishkan. They brought the building materials, or they brought the wool, the dyes, the skins, whatever they brought it to the Mishkan because they wanted it in that place. So therefore, that's where you're chai. But if it's removing it from the house, and there's no purpose in bringing it to this other place per se, that's not doimet to the way it was in the Mishkan. Let's see the Gemara Tanarabana might say Eichlim Kishiur if he takes out Eichlim which has a shiur in Bekli, if he takes it out with a container Chayav ala Eichlim Upotra al Kli. Then he's Chayav for the food, but he's Potra on the Kli. But Vimaya Kli Tzorach Loi, but if he had a purpose for carrying out the Kli itself, meaning if the purpose of the Kli is not only to facilitate carrying the Eichlim, so therefore it's not only an accessory to the Eichlim, if he had a purpose for the Kli itself to carry out Chayiv Afal Kli, then he's Chayiv for both. So you're Chayiv for both. So the Gemara Shmami no Eichel Shnei Zeisei Chelav Behel Mechel Chayiv Shtayim. Well, can you not infer from that if a person eats two Zeisei Chelav Behel Mechel, he eats a zayis of chelav, and without realizing that, without coming to the realization that he was over and that he's chayiv achatas, he ate a second zayis of chelav. That even though it's in one lapse of awareness, even though it's in one, there's no interruption between, he had no awareness of the aver between the two zaysim, can we say that you're chayiv shtayim, because you're saying that you're chayiv over here on the Kli and on the Eichlim. So should we say that you're Chayiv Shtayim for such a case? And as the Rashba explains, really the Dimyan would be to not eating two Zeisei Chela B'Helam Echad. This is one act of Eitzah. He carried out the food and the Kli at one time. It wouldn't be more similar to eating one big piece of chelav that has two zeisim at the same time? So the Rashba explains that since there are two different items, one is a food, one is a kli, it's doima to two separate actions of haitzah behelam echad. Al kol panim, could we not infer from here, contrary to the opinion of most Tanoim, that should we say that you're chayiv, even if it's in one helam, you're chayiv two chatos? He says no, because the case that we're talking about over here is shogag ala oichlin. He was a shogeg on the oichlin. There's no two chatos over here. He was a shogeg on the oichlin, and he was amazing on the kli. But you would not, if they were both shogeg, if it was shogeg on both, you would not be chayiv for two. There's no two chatos, because you're not chayiv for shnei zeisechel mehelam echad. The Rishonim are bothered. If he's mezid al kli, how can you consider him to be a shaygig? How can you consider him to be a shaygig on the oichlim? If he's a mezid al kli, that means he's a mezid in Chil Shabbos. And that means that had he known that he was taking out a kli, taking out the oichlim, or that's also during Shabbos, he would have done it anyway. So how can you consider him to be a shaygig? So how can they learn in Rashi, how can Rashi learn that he's a shaygig al oichlim, and Mezer ala Kli, and we considered him to be a shaygig on the Eichlim. But perhaps the pshat is that he's a shaygig on the Eichlim. He didn't realize that he was taking out the food, or that it's awesome. Had he realized, he wouldn't take out the food. On the Kli, he's amazing. He is on the Kli, he wants to take out the Kli so badly for whatever purpose. He has a special purpose, a business transaction, or something he wants to sell the Kli, something that for a specific that he doesn't care. He'd be amazed on the Kli. On the Eichlim, he doesn't care that much. So had he known that it would have been also that he's carrying, he wouldn't have done it. Had he known that there are Eichlim over here, he wouldn't have done it. So he's a shaygig on the Eichlim, he's amazed on the Kli. How can you say that that's the case of all af ala kli katan? It says even on the kli, so it's mashma that we're talking in the same scenario, that he's chayev not only for the oichlim, he's chayev af ala kli, and it's mashma, it's the same type of chiyuv. Ella amar Ravashi kigayin sheshaga b'zeh b'zeh. We're talking where he's taker shagig on both. V'noidaloi v'chaz v'noidaloi, and what it means is that he was a shagig on both, and it was one helam, but then he became aware, someone informed, he became aware that he took out, let's say, the oichel, but he was not yet aware that he took out the kli, or vice versa. So then he knew that he had a chi of chatas for one of them. Then afterwards he was informed or became aware that he's chayiv of chatas for the second one, or bepluk to the Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Lakish, and it's totally in the machlekes of Rav Yochanan and Shimon ben Lakish, that if it's noida, if he became aware afterwards he became aware of them separately, then he's chayiv if he's chayiv two chatos. So we're going on this over here, according to the opinion that if he became aware of them separately, then the idea is machalik and he is chayiv for two. As a chayiv b'mita, potter af ala mita. If he takes out a living person on the mita, he's potter and the mita as well. Since he's potter on the chai, because the chai noises atzmo, he's potter on the mita. Lema must need to. Well, if we're holding of this concept of a chai noises atzmo, let us say that the Tana of the Mishnah is Rabbi Nosson and not the Chachamim. Lema must need to Rabbi Nosson who lay Rabbanan. The Tanya might say a behema chayav oifel reshus harabim. If he takes out an animal, a chaya or bird to the reshus harabim, ben chayim ben shchutim, whether they're alive or shech, they're chayav. You're chayav for taking them out. So the Chachamim, the Rabbanan apparently hold that he's chayav for a chayav. We don't say a chayav noises atzma. Rabbi Nosson oimer al shchutin chayav. He's chayav for shchutin v'al chayim potter. Rabbi Nosson says no, a chayav you're potter because chayav noises atzma. On shchutin you're chayav. So chayav noises atzma. So apparently this concept of chai noises asma seems to be a machlokes Rav Nosson and Chachamim, and it seems to be that only Rav Nosson holds chai noises asma. Tosfos asks, what is really the hesber in chai noises asma? What's the pshat with that? So chai, he helps, he facilitates in the carrying, he lightens the load, he makes it easier for the person to carry him. So what? Let's say the chai weighs 100 pounds, and now that he is noises atzmai, he helps facilitate the carrying. So the person carrying him is not carrying a 100-pound weight; he's carrying a 70-pound weight. So what? It's still a shir for itzah. He should still be chai. So what difference does it make that the chai lightens the load? And secondly, Tosfos asks that this should be considered like a case of ze yochol v'ze eino yochol, that the person carrying the chai, he can do the malacha, he's able to do the malacha, but the person being carried can't carry himself out. So even if you say that they're doing together, and even if you want to pater it on account of shnaim sha'asua, but still it should be considered like ze yochol v'ze eino yochol was your chayim. So on what basis should we say chai noises atzma to say that you're potter? Tosfos answers, it's not because of the lighter load, it's not because shnaim sha'asua, it's because it's not doimet to the way it was done in the Mishkan. It's not similar to the way it was done in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, they didn't carry out live animals, live creatures, live people. What they carried out were a chalozan that was killed, and they took it out when it was already killed. They took out the different the animals, the tchoshim, the elim, and those over there were walked by themselves, and so they didn't carry them. So they didn't carry any live creatures. Either the live creatures walked by themselves, or they, for instance, the chalozan, they killed it right away, but they did not carry any live creatures. So therefore, it's not doima to the way it was done in the Mishkan. That's the reason of the Patur. It's not because it's easier, it's not because it's Shnaim Shasua, it's not doima, it's not similar to the way Haitzah was done in the Mishkan. Al Kol Panim, the Gemara says that it seems to be that the only one that holds the Chai Shnei on Noisem Esasu Nosson. Let's say the Mishnah is Rabbi Nosson and not the Rabbanan. Gemara says no. Amar Rava Afilu Tamer Rabban, and you could say the Tana is also like the Rabban. Ad Kan Lei Plig Rabban Leather Rabban Nosson. Where do they argue that's only Behema Chayiv Ha'if? That's only by animals, creatures. Because when you try to take him out, they struggle, they resist, they make it more difficult. Aval Adam Chai Denaisis Asma Filu Rabban Moida. But the Rabban would be Moida by a person who facilitates the carrying. There might have chai noises atzma. The machlokes is by animal, by creatures. The Chacham say over there, the animal stiffens itself, it resists, it struggles, so it makes it more difficult. So over there we don't say chai noises atzma, meaning, by the fact that it makes it more difficult, the way Tosfos according to Tosfos Hesber, that means is that it's an equivalent of taking out something that's mes. Since it's not helping with it, it's an equivalent of taking out a mes. But Rav Nosson says that no, we say chai noises asma even by animal, even though they do resist, but soif kol soif, it's a living creature, and therefore we would apply the principle of chai noises asma. So the Chum answered selling animals to a goy, because you might rent the animals to the goy, and if the Yid owns the animal and the goy is working on Shabbos, there is the problem of shvisus behemta. The animal has to rest on Shabbos. So therefore, they answered the animals to sell to a goy. So, but Besera is mata besus. But Besera, it says, by a horse it's mutter. Why is he mata besus? Because he says, we're not geyser, because in any event, even if this does happen, the horse carries people, and there's no chiv chatas for that. There's no isur deraisa, because people ride on a horse, chai noises asma. So even if this does occur, it's not an isur deraisa, because it's not considered really carrying midaraisa, because chai noises asma. So therefore he's matim. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Beseira, Rabbi Rav Nosson, Amar Dover Echad. Rabbi Yochanan says that Ben Beseira and Rav Nosson held in the same way. Now, if you're going to say that the Rabbanan, by a person, by a human, they agree to Rav Nosson, and if you're going to say the Rabbanan, it's only by animals and birds that they struggle. So my area Ben Beseira Rav Nosson. So why is it Dafka Ben Beseira Rav Nosson? Even the Rabbanan you're telling me are moida by humans, so therefore, why are you saying Ben Beseira is dafka according to the shita of Rabbi Nosson? It should be according to the Chama also. The horse carries people ride on horses, and if the Chacham hold by humans, chai noises asmai, even the Rabbanan should be matched by sus. More answers ki am Rav Yochanan besus am yuchad lo'ifes. Now, Rav Yochanan says it's talking about a horse that's miyuchad lo'ifes. Since the horse is miyuchad for oifes, it's birds that are resting on the animal. It's live birds. The Chachamim would say in that case we don't apply the principle of chai noises atzmai, and they would say there is an isur deraisa over there, and therefore it's only Rabbi Nosson that would say in that case that there's no isur deraisa over there. Do we have such a scenario? Tell me it's a case of oifus, that it's the case of a horse that carries oifus. Is there such a thing that there's a horse that's made to transport birds? What says he? Yes, there is. He could debate Viden. In the case of the hunters, they put birds on the horses, birds of prey, and they use the birds to hunt and attract other birds. So the horses are carrying these birds. So the hunters, that's the way they use to trap and hunt, and the hunt with other birds is by putting these live types of birds on the horses. So in that case, we say that it's only Rav Nosson who would be matir. That only Rav Nosson would be matir. The Chum would say in such a case it would be also because we don't say chai noises asma by animals. Omar Rav Yochanan moida Rav Nosson bekapas. Rav Nosson is moida that if the person is tied up, or an animal is tied up, then over there we do not say chai noises asma. In such a case, we don't say chai noises asma. When it's tied up, then it's the equivalent of like carrying out a mace. We don't say chai noises asma. How can you say that? The Persians, they used to wrap themselves up and bound themselves up with their clothing, and it's as if they're tied up. They can't move, they're restricted in their movement, so it's as if they're tied up. And the Bemseres Mater allows selling horses, and even to Persians. Now, if you tell me that by kappas it's tied up, he's maida that it's carrying, that we don't say Chai Noises Atzma, how can he say that we sell the horses, and even to Persians, it's command the kappas dami? So, how can we say that? Then Ben Beseira is matir to sell it, and Rav Yochanan says that's the sheet of Rav Nosson. So how can you say that Rav Nosson is moide bekavos? Ben Beseira is matir to sell the horses to the Persians. More answers. Also, no. Over there, it's not commanded kapos. The Persians, even though it looks like they're bound up and it looks like they're restricted in the movement, but it really is not like kappas, because Hasam Ramas Rucho Dinakalu. And the fact that they're so stiff and immobile that's just their gaiva. They're so haughty. They conduct themselves like they don't move, and that's only their manner of looking like majestic and gaivadik, haughty and above everybody else. And the proof is the Rosh Malkelave. There's a certain officer that the king was angry at him, and then the soldiers were chasing after him to arrest him. The Roy Tlosa Parsa Bekari, and he was able to run away 3 parsois, and he was able to run away by foot. So you see that it's not really that they were immobile. It's just that it's Ramos Ruach. But in Echanami, if someone really is tied up and is immobile, then Rav Nosson is maidem that we do not say Chai Noises Atzma.